Okay, so I pushed the wrong button when I was trying to share my screen. So we're just going to continue part two, just like Walden 2. And let's see. Okay, so hopefully you can see this chart on your computers. And here's the big mistake that people make. Positive doesn't mean good, and negative does not mean bad. Positive means a plus sign, adding something. Negative means a minus sign, taking something away. So positive means giving something, negative means taking something away. It's neither good nor bad. The good or bad is reinforcement or punishment. So reinforcement is a good thing. Punishment is a bad thing that people do not enjoy. So if we look at this, okay, let's look at the first square, positive reinforcement. We are adding something, that's the positive part, and reinforcement, that is a good feeling. So if I was a teacher and I wanted to use positive reinforcement and everybody behaved all morning long in class, I might say, wow, you are doing such a good job behaving and listening in class that I am going to give you, that's the positive part, a reinforcement. So giving is the plus sign, the positive part is the reinforcement. Sorry about that. See, it's even confusing to me. But so positive, I'm going to give you something. That's a plus sign. And reinforcement, it's going to be something good. I'm going to give you an extra recess for behaving. So hopefully that would increase that positive behavior, that good behavior in class. Negative reinforcement, it sounds bad, but it's not. Yeah, it's a good thing. So negative, I'm going to take something away. But I'm going to take something away, and this action of taking something away is going to make you feel good. So let's say, same scenario, everybody's behaving in the afternoon in class, and the teacher says, wow, I'm going to take something away to reinforce this behavior of you acting so well behaved in class. So the teacher might say, great job behaving this afternoon. I'm going to take away the homework for tonight. Okay, so that would be negative reinforcement. I'm going to take away homework. So that's a good feeling. No homework. Okay, that's going to increase that good behavior. All right, so every study that I've read, including later Bandura's, but every study I've read shows that positive and negative reinforcement, so the commonality there is reinforcement, works very well. Positive and negative punishment only works when the person dispensing the punishment is around to punish. Once they're out of the picture, it doesn't always work. So once the threat is gone, positive and negative punishment most likely don't work. So they can also cause aggression if it's physical punishment. So positive punishment. So people are trying to decrease some kind of behavior. So, they're going to give something that is not enjoyable. So giving positive punishment, not enjoyable. So everybody is misbehaving in class. I can't believe it. I'm going to give you an extra homework assignment. So that is positive punishment. Everybody's misbehaving in class. Going to use negative punishment. I'm going to take away a recess. The teacher thinks that that will decrease whatever behavior or misbehavior is occurring in class. And it might, as long as the teacher's there, but it probably will not be long lasting. So that they're going to give you, examples of different scenarios on the exams. And you're going to have to tell them, is it A, B, C, or D? Is it positive reinforcement, negative reinforcement, positive punishment, or negative punishment? All right. Let's go back. Okay. So let's go back and talk a little bit more about our notes. That's operant conditioning, Skinner. Social learning theory, as I said before, that's covered in our human growth and development or our lifespan class, depending on what you call it. And let's see. All right, so the last theory on this set of notes is Arnold Lazarus, multimodal therapy. If you can ever find the videos, just like I shared the Gloria tapes with Alice this week. Well, there are famous tapes of Arnold Lazarus and Linda. So you might find that interesting. He does some multimodal therapy with a woman named Linda, and he runs right through the basic ID. So I tend to see Lazarus using a number of different behavior modification techniques and different behavioral theories. But I really see his theory of multimodal therapy as really being helpful in the assessment process primarily. So let's talk about him for a little bit. He was from South Africa. He was young, he was frightened and lonely, and he was the youngest of 4 children. There were not a lot of children in his neighborhood. He began performing the piano at a young age of 7, so somewhat of a prodigy, and then he quit at the age of 12 when he didn't improve enough. That's pretty typical of child prodigies. A lot of times they'll plateau at around 12, but if they persist and continue working, then they will see more improvement after about a year. But he didn't persist, and he quit at that time. But he was picked on by other children, so he took up boxing. So he did compensate there to overcome bullying. He studied experimental psychology and then clinical psychology. In 1963, he was invited to work with Bandura at Stanford. So that's the connection with social learning theory and behavioral psychology. he worked with Bandura. Now, I never got to meet Lazarus, but I did get to meet Bandura, and he's a pretty interesting guy. Uh, Lazarus was kind of a proper uh, kind of fellow. I don't know if he's still alive or not. Um, but he taught at Temple, Yale, Rutgers, um, and president of multimodal psychology services. And he always puts down in Princeton. Now, Rutgers is right down the road from Princeton, but I guess he likes advertising where his office is. He worked with animals and once again used the ideas of Pavlov. He later applied these findings to the treatment of human phobias with Wolpe. And Wolpe is a pretty famous psychologist, and we'll talk about him in a little bit. So let's just look at the basic ID. And the one thing you cannot forget is that the first part, everybody memorizes the basic ID, but that's part 2. Part 1, he calls technical eclecticism, which just means drawing from other theories as needed. Part 2 is the basic ID. I primarily would use this in an assessment process using behavioral therapy. He believed that the human personality has 7 primary areas of functioning, and here he spells out the basic ID, and you should memorize these. B, behavior. A, affective response. How do you react emotionally? S, sensation. I, images. C, cognitions. I, interpersonal relationships. D is kind of a catch-all. He says drugs, but it includes biological functionings, nutrition, exercise, all kinds of, it's kind of like the catch-all. So in order to decide on treatment or therapeutic treatment, he has to understand what the issue is. And he has 4 principles. He says humans act and interact across these 7 areas. He says that these modalities are interconnected and must be treated as an interactive system. Accurate evaluation and diagnosis is best accomplished by systematically assessing each of the 7 modalities and how they interact. Comprehensive approach to treatment involves specific correction of significant problems across the basic ID. So you see him working his way through the basic ID if you can find a video of him demonstrating this in a counseling session. Not a lot of people use multimodal therapy today, but it gives some organization to behavioral psychology. I do want to talk about 2 other things really quickly here. Jacobson and Wolpe. So we mentioned Wolpe earlier. You need to know these 3 types of systematic desensitization. So dealing with phobias or extinguishing anything that you don't want. Desensitization, gradual, imagined. So it's both gradual in time and it's imagined. It's not real life. Exposure to an anxiety-evoking stimuli. In vivo desensitization, so vivo means live, so gradual, over time, exposure to actual real-life situations. Hey, the spider's right across the room in a cage. I'm not imagining it. And flooding, you usually have to have a doctor's medical doctor's approval for a client to go through flooding, either in vivo or imagined exposure to an anxiety evoking stimuli for a prolonged period of time. We'll also combine these with 3 other relaxation exercises. He called that combination stress inoculation. The first part of that is breathing, so diaphragmatic breathing, deep breathing. The second part is muscle relaxation, and the third part is imagery. So he would combine those 3 types of relaxation with systematic desensitization. EMDR, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, Francine Shapiro, treatment for phobias and post-traumatic stress disorder. So a lot of people were skeptical about this at first. I was, but it's like follow my finger and your eyes move back and forth, and people thought it was some form of hypnotism, but I don't believe it is. She combines the eye movement with relaxation, but also a narration of the traumatic event. So I believe that it replicates REM or REM movement when we sleep of the eyes, because now they have found that spinal fluid enters the brain and cleanses it of various things, and kind of reboots the brain so that we can integrate our memories in a more healthy way. But if we don't get any sleep because we are traumatized, we are unable to process those experiences the same way in our sleep as we would. So combining relaxation, eye movement, and a memory of the trauma in a very specific way could reproduce the natural effects of REM that we might naturally experience. All right, that is it for behavioral therapy.